Let me just begin by saying that the ideas and the opinions that I'm about to express are mine, and the mistakes, errors, and omissions that I'm bound to make are certainly also mine and mine alone. Anything I say should not be considered a reflection of my school or taken in any way as school board policy. I'm merely here as an individual to share some of my observations and opinions as honestly and openly as I can. Much has changed since James reached out about this quality education event. COVID-19 has put a whole new perspective on things. So, for those of you that are parents that might be listening, how's the whole homeschooling thing working out for you so far? Here's a tweet from a parent that you might identify with. I've been there. I've been a parent for 30 years, teacher for 20, and I've worked for the past 10 years rethinking the education system for grades K through 12. COVID has put a bright light on the inequities of public education. One example is the Thames Valley Board that's just finished distributing over 12,000 devices to families with inadequate access to online learning, which is wonderful. Congratulations. But if you think about it, that means that prior to COVID-19, about 17%, or if you were to look around an average classroom, about 5 kids in each classroom are unable to do online work from home. This pandemic has changed all our lives for the foreseeable future. Parents have been especially impacted trying to work from home while navigating online lessons with their kids. This situation is not a fair test of what widespread online learning should or could be. We're in an emergency response learning here, and everyone's just doing their best. Thank you, parents, for your patience. Thank you for your input and all that you're doing. But as terrible as COVID-19 is, it presents us with an opportunity here not to go back to school as usual. Things have changed. What I'm going to talk about is why change is needed in public education. I think we've heard about that for the first 2 speakers already. How we've been able to make some promising changes so far, and then I'm going to finish with a call to action because returning to school as normal, as usual, is just not an option. So let's start with why, shall we? Why does school need an upgrade? We've inherited a colonization model of education. Our public education system was designed in the late 1800s to serve the British Empire. Companies like the East India Company and our own Hudson's Bay Company needed people who could sit or preferably stand in one place for long periods of time, write legibly, add long columns of numbers accurately. They needed to be trained in the same system from Sydney, Australia to Bombay to Toronto, so they could be easily transferred. This was about getting people ready for work. This continued to serve the Industrial Revolution with a steady supply of assembly line workers into the early 1900s. It's interesting how much of our school system depends on content and compliance. Our school curriculum was devised in a time when access to information was limited and scarce. Content organized into subjects like math, English, and history made sense for a workplace where knowledge was power and workers who could follow rules and instructions by rote were the norm. And what's important for the 2020s are the connections we make. Anyone with a smartphone can have access to the whole of human understanding, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And unfortunately, more and more of that is misunderstanding. So it's not about what we know, but how we know it to be true. And then what do we do with conflicting information? Creativity has replaced compliance in the workplace. And knowing what to do in the face of uncertainty is what's valued now. And with COVID-19, we need to be able to do all that, making those kinds of connections, but at a distance. So for those of you that maybe haven't been in school for a while, here's a bit of a reminder. The standard public school puts one teacher in charge of 25 to 30 kids at a time. In elementary, that's one teacher with her kids for most of the day, and in high school, kids move from room to room. But in both cases, the typical day is cut up into subjects in specific periods of time. Open your book for math, close that book, open your book for science, close that, and so on, it goes throughout the day. Recognizing that the structure doesn't work for every student, the good, sincere, hardworking people in the education system have responded, as they should, to try to fill those gaps and meet individual needs. So when a student doesn't fit in, The system develops an alternative for them. These exist like satellites orbiting the planet of the regular school system. The fastest growing and largest school in the public education system is alternative ed. This focus leaves regular classroom teachers without necessary training and resources to support all students. And it has the unintended consequence of maintaining the status quo. We inadvertently tell regular classroom teachers, you run your class as you always have. We'll take the students that don't fit in off your hands with alt-ed. Alt-ed also tells kids that they don't fit in. Here, you can stay in this special class until you can comply with the regular classroom. Meanwhile, the majority of students who stay in regular classes are checking out. Gallup does a survey of students every year, and the pattern's always the same. A severe drop in school engagement starting in grade 5 and leaving only about 33% of senior high school students engaged in school. That's an average of 20 students in every classroom checked out after grade 9. Since school is boring for kids, we respond with special events, guest speakers, genius hour, hackathons, and whatnot. These are usually extracurricular, which means that while valuable and enjoyable, they don't count for much academic credit. This, like alt-ed, has the unintended consequence of supporting the status quo. And this decrease in engagement that you're seeing here is mirrored by a marked increase in anxiety amongst teens. According to a 2009 study of 63,000 high school and college students, anxiety disorders affect 25% of teenagers, a percentage that has steadily risen over the past 30 years or so, and is showing no sign of slowing down. So how do we make school better for everyone, all day and each and every day? What are the conditions and scaffolding needed for a public education system that learns, adapts, and continuously improves for everyone? Well, we tried this. We started with high school, and we began by putting out a challenge to our high school teachers. What if there were no subjects and no periods? What if kids just showed up in the morning and you had all day with them? No bells, just learning and teaching. What would you do? Now, we got 2 responses to that question when we put it to teachers. One was, don't talk to me. You are crazy. This is the end of education as we know it. The second response was, don't tease me, because if I don't even want to think about this unless you're serious. So we showed them that we were serious by inviting them to build their own schools inside schools. This was not a program to implement. There was no rollout, there was no binder or roadmap or instructions to follow. Just the opportunity to work together without the usual restrictions. And without subjects and periods, the teachers organized learning around community projects based upon other things like the UN sustainability goals and the global competencies put forth by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It turns out that when traditional science, math, English, and geography teachers work with one another, they make connections between all kinds of traditional content. It turns out that students still learn regular high school content, achieve regular high school credit, and enjoy doing it all while building global competence. The teachers also developed a set of beliefs about teaching and learning. There are 9 of them here, and all are set up to help guide lesson planning. So, for example, in number 4 here, when we put collaboration over solitary learning experiences, we get more project work and fewer worksheets to do. There's a lot packed into each of these, and I put this slide in for you to read later if you like. But these really just boil down to 3 basic points. And when we believe in and hold one another accountable for putting creativity over compliance, fairness over efficiency, learning over teaching, it's amazing how much that changes the learning experience for everyone involved, teachers and students alike. We began with a few projects and a few schools, and we learned by doing. And frankly, we learned far more by struggling through what didn't work, failing small, failing often, then learning from that, reworking and adjusting. And over the years, this model spread quickly from high school into elementary. This works for better learning. And given the chance, most parents and students are embracing it. We get things like STEAM School, where we have 5 teachers and 80 grade 9 students spend all day, every day in a combined English, science, math, technology, civics and careers course. Each teacher has their own specialty, but everyone helps each student learn all of it. Students learn in teams and make their thinking visible by getting it out of their heads and up on the walls to see and connect, because there's no better way to get people on the same page than to have them working on the same page. Students weigh in on real-world problems brought to them by community partners. This group is learning through experience by prototyping biodegradable plastic products, while others in the same class focus on hydroponics. These students on the right are sharing their understanding of geometry with their teacher using the skateboards they've created. At the same time, the other teacher in this art of math team is helping the rest of the class realize their visions with other projects. So we have this model for school that emerged in the before times that shows us the power of teachers working and learning together to build expertise, agency, and community. And the challenge now is to take what we've learned from this school inside a school experience and apply it to school outside of school after COVID-19, more resilient, agile, and ready to respond to the uncertainty and the changing circumstances we face. In times of disruption, we seek comfort in the familiar. It's in our nature. Horses let out of a burning stable will run back inside because their stall is their safe place. Coming out of COVID-19 is the only natural for us to seek comfort in getting back to normal. Talk of school innovation will be uncomfortable. I can guarantee you will hear about the need to get back to the basics. You'll hear things like put innovation on the back burner, and we'll get to it when things are more settled. Don't let them get away with that. Challenge yourself and others. Embrace the discomfort and demand that there's no going back. We have examples like the school inside a school at work. Demand schools that organize around creativity, fairness, and learning, and focus on global competencies instead of subjects. And another thing is to ask school leaders why their teachers aren't working in teams. Any lasting school innovation has come from team teaching. And in closing, I challenge everyone listening to take advantage of this disruption. Realize that there's no back to normal. Embrace the discomfort, and let's not run back into a burning building. Thank you.